A couple of months ago, Bethesda started teasing something. From interviews, we started hearing about Fallout 76's biggest update ever. Something even bigger than Wastelanders coming this year. And even in-game, the Mothman Cultist Bridge started expanding towards the west, and now the cultists have left altogether. That something ended up being Ohio, or more specifically, Fallout 76's Burning Springs update, dropping on December 17th, the exact same day as Season 2 of the Fallout TV show, and that'll be relevant here, as this update does take some major inspiration from the show in more ways than one.
Got no time nor inclination to chit-chat. Find me at the last resort, in Highway Town.
Bethesda just invited me to a preview event for Burning Springs, where I got to play several hours of this new DLC. So of course, take that into consideration. I paid for my own travel and accommodation around this event, but Bethesda did provide me with food and drink, as well as a very interesting gaming experience. And I'll say it now, come December 17th, a lot of you are going to be reinstalling Fallout 76 for this update. But is it really the biggest update ever? We gotta talk about that one. So even just going to Ohio right at the bat, something really interesting is happening as Bethesda is finally exploring new lore and factions here. Okay, so there's one familiar face, but most people are totally new. Something happened to Ohio. You can just visually see this walking around the new region, which is directly connected to the main map to the west. It almost feels like a desert at times, with an overt redness coming through in some areas. And there is an explanation here. I only got some brief glimpses at this during my demo, but lore-wise it seems like something spilt in Ohio. There are notes mentioning the water turning red as well as the ground turning, and you could find new intel all over the place that may somehow be related. So Ohio isn't doing very well, and you could definitely see and feel that in-game, partly because it's now ruled by the Rust King, as well as the newly added Rust Raiders, some of the very commonly seen new bad guys that will occupy this region. This is a really great hands-on in that you weren't really directed to do anything, we were just plopped in with a character and free to do what we wanted. And at the preview event, everyone was playing on the same server. But for me personally, I chose to progress the main story of this DLC as much as possible, and this story is definitely unique. It seems like relatively early on, you have some encounter with the Rust King, this super mutant enemy that's kind of the big bad or maybe big ally of this DLC. But either way, the Rust King has a major impact. You can find several people all throughout the region that are very upset with the king and what his raiders have been doing to this area. And these raiders seem to have a bit more going on. The Rust King's all about power and dominance. His raiders going on patrols as well as occupying many of the new locations in Bitter Springs. And it seems like they have some kind of new ability where they get empowered or maybe even just a battle cry. It's pretty cool and definitely made them stand out from some of the other raiders in game. But as you try and do some of the story content, something interesting happens, as I had to do a plethora of challenges. A core part is the new player hub with Highway Town. We'll talk a lot more about this later. Within this is the Ghoul, because yeah, the Ghoul from the Fallout TV show will be in, and yes, this is voiced by Walton Goggins.
Unless you got business, keep on walking.
This place never runs out of bounties.
You still interested in taking a bounty? That's a killer instinct I was looking for. Got a big stack of open contracts right there.
So now, of course, as far as lore implications, how is the Ghoul appearing in Fallout 76 and then also the TV show? But this does kind of make sense. Fallout 76 is about 200 years prior to the events of the TV show, so the Ghoul got ghoulified and then had a few decades to make his way over to Ohio. We didn't get an explanation on why, and honestly, we probably won't get an explanation. The Ghoul is going to give you bounties, and there's going to be two types of bounties which are a major part of the gameplay. Grunt hunts are the simpler bounties that you can just endlessly grab from the Ghoul, and they're really what you'd expect. Some enemy somewhere surrounded by slightly weaker enemies. The bounty typically has an effect, which is fun. Like here, I'm taking on Swift-Footed Outlaw, where he basically has speed hacks, or during my own gameplay session, I had a Resilient Bounty Leader, meaning that to actually finish things off and claim the bounty, I need to use a melee attack to finish them off. Definitely upped the challenge and made the entire experience a lot more interesting. It's nice that the bounty leaders have these extra effects on them, and I even encountered another that would heal themselves and allies. size, making the fight overall take a lot longer. But outside of just some of these simpler grunt hunts, there are also larger head hunts. And to do these, you're going to need to pay the Ghoul 5,000 caps, basically being the limit on how often you can do these. This will be a more proper bounty, and it'll trigger a public event that will call the entire server to help you take down this more difficult bounty. And these are truly awesome, because they utilize a ton of different themes and effects in-game. I went up against Cowgirl Jane, who was dressed as a cowgirl using a revolver and all, but also had a ton of gunslingers spawning around her. Sometimes the effects are hard to discern, but the boss might have had some kind of aim bonus here and of course a ton of extra HP. We tried to claim the bounty on the Mechanist as her reprogrammed Protectrons fought against us, and a bunch more. During my session I encountered Granny Gale as well as her grandma-themed enemies, the Piranha and Fisherman, and a bunch more. I probably did about 5 to 10 of these headhunts all throughout, and every single time we saw a different theme on the enemies. Quite a few of these got a laugh out of the entire preview room as someone would basically call out, hey, here's the boss, come check him out and his unique design. It was genuinely one of the most fun ways to experience these new events in Fallout 76. And despite it just being take down this enemy, I honestly had a ton of fun. I feel like these events were suitably challenging, so the entire server kinda needed to be involved. At several occasions, it was basically just a shooting gallery with several people all focusing down the bounty leader at once. So these bounties are an interesting mechanic, as to progress this new main questline as a part of Bitter Springs, you'll have to do several of these. That's what you're seeing in the background now. But it'll also just be a general new feature of Fallout 76 with the Ghoul, where you can just always do bounties if you want to. But further to progress the questline, there's a new bounty challenge type, requiring things like complete a bounty, wound 25 enemies, take out 15 enemies with explosives, etc. Pretty similar to some of the existing challenges in Fallout 76. But part of the main Bitter Springs questline is having to complete a certain number of these challenges. So like to get to this eventual big meeting with the Rust King, I had to do a bunch of challenges, which definitely feels very MMO-esque. I was doing bounties just focusing on enemies' legs because I had to cripple a bunch of people to get the next quest. I think a lot of these single-player Fallout fans that return for this DLC are not going to like that. Thankfully, there was a good amount of content beyond that, but the challenges took about 20 to 30 minutes, and I didn't even do this entire questline, I don't think. That said, the bounties are still very fun at first, and doing the challenges while you do the initial bounties, even with a couple of friends, is a pretty fun way to play Fallout 76. Eventually though, things do become more story-focused, as you must recruit several characters to go up against the Rust King. All of this being led by someone new you meet in Highway Town. I won't spoil what happens here, but Bethesda clearly lays things out where you could end on good or bad terms with the Rust King, who is some kind of intelligent super mutant that's focused on power and dominance above all. Honestly, I didn't get much backstory from the Rust King. About 2/3 of the way through my play session, I was able to complete the questline with the Rust King, and basically got a generic, hey, I'll see you later, or I'll contact you at a later time. It's not really clear if that's the end of the questline for Bitter Springs. Is more coming as a part of this update, or is that a future update? And that's where things around the scope of this update do get interesting. As far as story content goes, I only actually played 1 to 2 hours and then hit a blocker. Granted, I didn't start from the very beginning, so there's likely more content there, but as of right now, I don't really know how much longer or shorter things actually are. But thankfully, the world, the new area of Bitter Springs is also full of new interesting locations, including quite a few Fallout TV show references. This new region's clearly inspired by the Fallout TV show. They added in a super duper mart, which looks great, and you could find those same freezers or cases that ghouls were trapped in Season 1, even finding some hostile ghouls here. A Starlight Drive-In was added, which is a location we've seen in some of the leaked footage from Season 2. The Starlight Drive-In will even be a new workshop location in-game. And of course, the Ghoul. It's not really clear how much or how little of the Ghoul will be here. He has some nice dialogue in-game, but it really seems like he's just largely going to act as the bounty hunter or really bounty giver. It didn't seem like a massive lore dump as far as I can tell, although I didn't see all of the new content, and either way, I still think it is fun to have crossovers with the show and even other games. I'm glad Fallout 76 is exploring new factions and new stories, but familiar faces are always enjoyable in Fallout to me. I'd love to see other characters pop up in Fallout 76, and the Ghoul being here was definitely a nice addition. But even beyond some of the TV show references, what definitely made stand out as a much larger piece of new content is the plethora of new locations added with it. The big new location is Highway Town. It's built into a highway and is pretty unique in that there is a base camp with some general NPCs on the top side, but on the inside, Highway Town is a brand new player hub and will probably become the main player hub going forward. And yes, you can fast travel inside or even directly to this bounty board if you want. Lots of the new quests are based around Highway Town, as the Ghoul is here, but Bethesda mentioned how Highway Town can be used for various vendors in one place also, and will hopefully become a proper community space. Honestly, I think a great way to elevate this going forward is to allow player vendors to be placed very close nearby. Imagine not only having all of the NPC vendors, but also a bunch of player vendors right next to each other right here. Maybe even add in a small fee for selling your items at Highway Town. The other big location that I'm sure many of you have seen already is Rust Kingdom. This is the Rust King's base and arena, but it seems to be more of a new story location or a place to clear out, as it does have these epic new armored Deathclaws. This does have the flaming Deathclaw gate, and yes, it does in fact breathe fire in-game and looks awesome. The design here is simply epic, and both Rust Kingdom and Highway Town really command your view as you approach them. These are some of the coolest Fallout settlements that we've gotten in a long time. Like I mentioned before, Rust Kingdom has some quests that take you here. This is the inside of the Rust King's arena, but it was also the most consistent way I was finding these new armored up Deathclaws. We never got an explanation as to why they have armor now, likely some relation to the Rust King, but they're awesome and definitely fit in as a new higher tier enemy. Beyond that, a bunch of other notable locations are here. Athens is a major settlement built out of the real world Ohio University, not to be confused with Ohio State. There's some historical forts around, but really the change I noticed that I think is going to upgrade this DLC for a ton of you is around exploration. Exploring here gave me more Fallout 3 vibes at times, as the horrific or even just random really seems to have returned here. Sadly, I didn't get a ton of footage of this, but I found some hanging bodies in a Red Rocket garage, and just generally more of that violent or interesting Fallout environmental storytelling. Definitely some of the most violent stuff I've seen in a while, but also just more random things to find in general. I saw enough of this that it really felt like this must have been a design choice for the team overall. Not to say there's a bunch of new named locations, but just as you go from location to location, there's a lot more to encounter here than past DLCs. And it was details like that that really made the experience feel very polished. This update just feels a lot more fleshed out compared to some of the past DLCs. It seems like there's also going to be a couple of new events included here, although I didn't experience them during my preview. And during the Q&A section, they even mentioned how a proper next-gen update is coming to Fallout 76, allowing them to directly optimize the game on next-gen platforms, which should be a nice improvement for everyone, as well as plans to update a variety of the existing in-game events. So with all that in mind, should you return to Fallout 76 to play Burning Springs? I would say almost certainly yes. This very well may be the most players Fallout 76 ever has, and if I was you, I would plan to return in mid-December, December 17th specifically, because that's when this update is supposed to be dropping and when Season 2 of the show is coming out. The content in Burning Springs is fun. It was a bit grindy at times with the challenges. I wouldn't say the storyline was the most interesting, at least so far, but exploring this area, especially with some of the fresh environmental storytelling, as well as completing bounties with the Ghoul and a bunch of your friends who will likely also jump back into the game, is just really enjoyable. The exploration felt very Fallout, while the events felt very Fallout 76, but Fallout 76 at its best. Lots of laughing and just being curious about what kinds of new content would be thrown in your face. I think there might be some debate around this being the biggest update ever. This update definitely feels bigger. It is a substantial new DLC for Fallout 76, and considering it's free for those of you who already own the game, I would definitely recommend reinstalling. As far as the biggest update ever, I think those of you who loved Wastelanders may find some disappointment here, although again, it's hard to gauge the full scope of the story content, but at least from my preview, it doesn't have nearly as much as Wastelanders. But there's still a lot to enjoy and a lot to experience here, and if anything, it feels like a more well-balanced update, with story content, new events, as well as a bunch of new activities. The public test server for Burning Springs seems to be going up very shortly, so we may even be getting a more in-depth look soon. If you're interested in that, get subscribed. But thanks again to Bethesda for inviting me to this preview, and overall, those are my thoughts on Burning Springs. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below.